I'm the golden child. I get the family business. Because you're nothing without me, my brother said. Dad agreed. I quit and took the client list, which was mine contractually. Their revenue dropped 90% in a month. Dad called begging. I offered to buy the company for $1. So my brother actually said this to my face during a family dinner last month. Not joking. Looked me dead in the eyes and told me I was nothing without him, and that he deserved the family business because he was the golden child. My dad nodded along, like this was just objective truth we all needed to accept. Spoiler alert, I quit the next morning. Took every client I'd built relationships with over the past 5 years and watched their precious company crater faster than the Titanic. But we'll get to that. Let me paint you the full picture here because this didn't happen in a vacuum. This was 28 years in the making. I'm 32 male. My brother Jason is 28 male. We grew up in one of those families where everything looks perfect from the outside, but is completely dysfunctional once you peek behind the curtain. My parents ran a mid-sized commercial landscaping company that my dad started back in the 90s. Nothing fancy, but it brought in steady money and employed about 15 people at its peak. From the moment Jason was born, he could do no wrong. And I mean literally nothing. This kid broke a window playing indoor football when he was 7. Dad laughed it off as boys being boys. I accidentally knocked over a lamp when I was 8, grounded for 2 weeks and had to pay for the replacement out of my birthday money. The double standards were so obvious, you could see them from space. When we were kids, the favoritism was annoying, but whatever. Kids don't really process that stuff fully. You just accept that life isn't fair and move on. But as we got older, it got more blatant and honestly more damaging. High school is where things really started to diverge. I busted my butt to maintain a 3.9 GPA while working part-time at a local nursery to save for college. I was genuinely interested in horticulture and landscape design. Spent hours reading about native plants and sustainable landscaping practices. Thought maybe I could bring some fresh ideas to the family business someday. I'd spend my weekends at the nursery, learning from this old guy named Phil, who'd been in the business for 40 years. He taught me how to identify plant diseases, how to read soil composition, how to design irrigation systems that actually worked efficiently. I filled notebooks with sketches and plans, studying landscape architecture books I'd check out from the library because I couldn't afford to buy them. My reward for academic achievement? A pat on the head, and a lecture about how grades don't matter as much as real-world experience. Meanwhile, Jason barely scraped by with a 2.3 GPA, never held a job, spent every weekend partying, and got constant praise for being social and building connections. Yeah, connections at keg parties definitely translate to business success. When I made honor roll every semester, I got a good job text from my mom. When Jason managed to pass algebra on his 3rd attempt, they took him out to his favorite steakhouse to celebrate. I'm talking about $100 per person kind of place. They never even asked if I wanted to come along. Junior year, I entered this regional landscape design competition through my horticulture class. Spent 3 months on my submission, a comprehensive plan for converting a suburban yard into a native plant habitat that would reduce water usage by 70% while providing food and shelter for pollinators. Won 2nd place and a $500 scholarship. Know what my parents said? That's nice, honey. Didn't come to the award ceremony. Didn't ask to see the design. My mom actually used my scholarship check to help pay for Jason's homecoming dance tickets and dinner because he really wanted to impress this girl. That same year, Jason made the JV basketball team. Not varsity, JV. As a bench warmer who played maybe 5 minutes total all season. My parents went to every single game, bought one of those custom jerseys with his number, put a bumper sticker on both their cars, made a Facebook album with like 300 pictures of him sitting on the bench. I brought up the discrepancy once, and my dad told me I needed to stop being jealous of my brother's achievements. Jason's achievements? Sitting on a bench. When I graduated high school, my parents gave me a card with $50 in it. Cool, thanks. When Jason graduated 4 years later, they threw him a massive party at a local venue, invited like 100 people, and gave him a brand new truck. A freaking Ford F-150 with all the bells and whistles. His graduation gift cost more than my entire first year of community college tuition. I pointed this out once, and my mom literally said, Jason just has more friends to celebrate with. You've always been more of a loner. Yeah, Mom, real supportive. Nothing says loving parent like calling your kid a loner when you actively exclude him from family celebrations. I went to community college because we couldn't afford a 4-year school. Or so I was told. Worked full-time at the nursery, took classes at night, graduated with an associate's degree in landscape architecture. No family at graduation because it's just community college, not a real university. The community college years were brutal, honestly. I'd work from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the nursery, grab a quick meal in my car, then head to class from 3 to 9 p.m. Some semesters I took online courses too, studying in the truck during my lunch breaks. I survived on energy drinks, cheap sandwiches, and about 4 hours of sleep a night. When I graduated, I invited my parents to the ceremony, told them weeks in advance. My mom said they'd try to make it if Jason's intramural soccer game didn't run late. They chose the game. Meanwhile, Jason gets a free ride to State University, where he changed his major 4 times and took 6 years to graduate with a business degree. 6 years. For a 4-year program. And they paid for every single semester without complaint while I was eating ramen and working 60-hour weeks. They paid for his dorm room, his meal plan, his textbooks, his spring break trips. When he changed his major from marketing to finance to management to finally business administration, they just nodded and paid for the extra semesters. No questions asked. I calculated it once. My entire 2-year community college education cost them $0 because I paid my own way. Jason's 6-year university adventure cost them close to $90,000. After I graduated, I started working full-time for the family business. Figured I'd prove my worth, you know? Show them what I could contribute. I started in the field doing actual landscaping work, planting, mowing, basic maintenance. Didn't matter that I had a degree. Dad insisted everyone needed to start at the bottom to understand the business. Funny thing though, when Jason finally graduated and came to work for the company 2 years later, he started in the office, never touched a shovel, never got his hands dirty, went straight to business development, which apparently meant taking clients out for lunch on the company card and calling it work. I worked my way up over 5 years. Field work to crew leader, to project manager to senior account manager. Every promotion I had to fight for had to prove myself 10 times over. I brought in new clients through actual networking, joined the local chamber of commerce, went to industry conferences, built genuine relationships with property managers and commercial developers. Those first couple years in the field were rough, 12-hour days in 100-degree heat, coming home with dirt under my fingernails. But I learned the business from the ground up, learned what worked and what didn't. I specialized in sustainable landscaping solutions and native plant installations, which was becoming a huge trend. I could talk to clients about reducing water usage, creating pollinator habitats, using rain gardens for stormwater management. This wasn't just mowing lawns. This was comprehensive environmental design that saved clients money and helped them meet environmental regulations. My first major client was this property manager named Rebecca, who ran 3 office buildings downtown. I put together a proposal showing how we could reduce their water usage by 55% and cut maintenance costs by 30% using native plants. She loved it, gave us the contract for all 3 properties. That account brought in $78,000 in the first year and led to referrals for 6 more properties. Within 3 years of focusing on this niche, I brought in about 60% of the company's new business. These were major contracts: office parks, industrial complexes, mixed-use developments, multi-year maintenance agreements worth 6 figures annually. I had built genuine relationships with these clients. They trusted me. They called me directly with questions. I brought in this massive industrial complex account worth over $200,000 a year. The facilities director, Tom, had been dealing with another contractor who kept screwing up. I gave us a trial period on 1 building. We killed it. 3 months later, he gave us all 9 buildings in the complex. Tom would call me directly for everything. I had my cell number on that account because I knew it was worth taking care of properly. Here's the important part. When I negotiated my promotion to senior account manager, I made sure my contract specified that any clients I brought in were assigned to me. My dad signed off on it without thinking about the implications. I even had a clause that said if I left the company, I could take my client relationships with me as long as I didn't directly solicit them for 6 months after departure. Dad signed it. Probably didn't even read it fully. Big mistake on his part. Jason, meanwhile, spent those same 5 years accomplishing approximately nothing. He showed up late most days, left early for client meetings that were really just golf or day drinking. He brought in maybe 3 new clients total, and 2 of them were his college buddies who threw us some pity contracts. One of Jason's buddies owned this tiny office building, gave us the contract as a favor. Maybe $12,000 a year. Jason acted like he'd landed a Fortune 500 deal, bragged about it for weeks. The clients Jason did interact with constantly complained. He'd forget to return calls, show up to meetings unprepared, make promises he couldn't keep. I spent half my time doing damage control. More than once, I had to personally apologize to clients he'd pissed off and offer discounts just to keep them from walking. There was this property manager, Linda, who managed a shopping center we'd been trying to land for months. Jason insisted on taking the meeting to prove he could close deals. He showed up 15 minutes late wearing wrinkled khakis, hadn't prepared at all. Linda asked about our approach to high-traffic areas. Jason literally said, "We'll just plant tougher plants." That was his whole answer. I jumped in and did the whole presentation while Jason checked his phone. We didn't get that account. Linda went with a competitor. She told me later she couldn't trust a company that would send someone so unprepared. But none of this mattered to my parents. Jason had a business degree and natural charisma, which apparently meant more than actual results. The fact that I was personally responsible for more than half the company's revenue was just details. Things really came to a head about 3 months ago. My dad called a family meeting on a Sunday, said he wanted to discuss the future of the business. I figured maybe he was finally going to acknowledge my contributions, maybe talk about a partnership structure. I'd been working there for 7 years at this point, had proven myself 1,000 times over. We sat down in my parents' dining room. Mom made her usual pot roast, which nobody really ate because the tension was too thick. Dad cleared his throat and dropped the bomb. He was getting ready to retire, wanted to transition ownership of the company within the next 2 years, and he'd decided that Jason should take over as CEO and majority owner. I just sat there, literally speechless. Jason got this smug little smile on his face like he'd won something. My mom was beaming at him like he'd just cured cancer. I finally found my voice. "Are you serious right now?" Dad did that thing where he got all defensive and authoritative. This is a family business, and Jason is the natural choice. He has the business education and the personality to lead. The personality? Dad. Jason has barely brought in any clients. Most of the property managers actively avoid dealing with him because he's so unreliable. Meanwhile, I've built this company's entire commercial portfolio basically from scratch. Jason actually laughed. Dude laughed in my face. Come on, bro. You're good at the plant stuff. I'll give you that. But you don't have what it takes to run a business. You're not a people person. You're more of a back-end guy? Back-end guy. Like I was some IT support person and not the one keeping the whole operation afloat. My dad nodded along. Jason's right. You're valuable to the company. Don't get me wrong. We want you to stay on in your current role. But leadership requires different skills. I looked at my mom, hoping for maybe some pushback. She just smiled that same fake supportive smile she always did and said, "You boys will work great together. Jason can handle the business side, and you can focus on what you're good at." That's when Jason dropped the real bomb. He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed, and said, "Let's be real here. You're nothing without this company. Without me running things and throwing you projects, you'd be unemployed. You should be grateful I'm willing to keep you on." I waited for my dad to correct him, to say something like, "That's not true," or "Show some respect to your brother." But Dad just sat there, didn't contradict him, didn't defend me, just nodded like Jason had made a perfectly reasonable point. My mom even added, "Jason's just being honest, sweetie. The company is bigger than any one person's ego." And that was it. That was the moment I realized I was done. Completely done. I didn't argue, didn't yell, just stood up, told them I needed to think about things, and left. Drove home to my apartment and spent the whole night going through my employment contract and my client files. See, here's what my family didn't understand because they'd never bothered to actually look at my contract. Every single client I'd brought in over the past 5 years was contractually assigned to me. The contract my dad had signed said clear as day that these were my accounts. And the departure clause said I couldn't solicit them for 6 months after leaving. But it didn't say anything about them following me if they wanted to. I pulled out my client list and started going through it methodically. 41 total accounts that I'd personally brought in and managed. Of those, 37 were major commercial contracts worth at least $20,000 annually. The other 4 were smaller but still solid businesses. I'd built real relationships with these people. We're talking property managers I'd known for years, developers who trusted my expertise, facilities directors who called me directly because they knew I'd take care of them. These weren't just names in a database. These were people who valued my knowledge and my reliability. I started making phone calls. Not to solicit, just to check in. Asked how their properties were doing, if they had any upcoming projects. Normal relationship maintenance stuff that I did regularly anyway. Rebecca, that first property manager who'd given me a shot years ago, answered on the second ring. We chatted for a bit about one of her properties, some drainage issues they were dealing with. Then she said something that made my decision for me. "Everything okay with you? You sound stressed." I told her I was considering some career changes, might be starting my own venture focused on sustainable landscaping. "About time," she said without hesitation. "I'll be honest, the only reason we stick with your dad's company is because of you. If you leave, we're leaving too. Just let me know where you land." That was the first one. I made similar calls to Tom, to this facilities director named Michelle who managed a tech campus, to David who ran property management for a regional retail chain. Same response from all of them. They worked with me, not the company. What I found out was enlightening. Turned out a lot of my clients had been getting increasingly frustrated with the company lately, billing errors that I used to catch and fix before they became problems. Poor communication from the office when they called with questions. Crews showing up late or not at all. All the stuff that happened when Jason's incompetence infected the parts of the business I didn't directly control. Michelle told me about this incident from 2 weeks prior. She'd called the office with an urgent issue, some vandalism in one of their landscape beds that needed immediate attention. Jason answered, told her he'd get someone out there that afternoon. Nobody showed up. She called back the next day. Jason said he forgot to log the work order and would get it done tomorrow. 2 more days passed with nothing. Finally, she called me directly. I got a crew out there within 3 hours, had the damage repaired by end of day, and sent her photos of the completed work. She told me if I ever left the company, she'd follow me anywhere because she was tired of dealing with Jason's nonsense. David from the retail chain had a similar story. Billing issues that kept recurring because Jason couldn't figure out our invoicing system. Double charges, missing line items, wrong properties listed on invoices. David said his accounting department was ready to drop us entirely until I personally took over handling all their billing. Several of them mentioned they'd been thinking about looking for new contractors. A few even asked point blank if I was happy with the company, like they were feeling me out to see if I was planning to start my own business. I didn't commit to anything on those calls. Just listened, took notes, started putting together a plan. I spent the rest of that weekend doing research, looking into business licenses, insurance requirements, startup costs. I already had most of the knowledge I needed. I'd basically been running the commercial side of my dad's business for years anyway. I just needed to formalize it. The more I looked into it, the more feasible it seemed. My overhead would be minimal at first. I could operate with a smaller crew initially, just handling the accounts I knew would follow me. I could work from a home office instead of renting space. The equipment I needed I could lease or rent until revenue justified purchasing. I ran the numbers about 15 different ways. Even in a worst case scenario where only half my clients followed me, I'd be profitable within 6 months. And based on those phone calls, worst case didn't seem likely. On Monday morning, I went into the office early, printed out my resignation letter. Simple, professional, 2 weeks notice. left it on my dad's desk before anyone else got in. Then I sat at my desk and waited. Dad showed up around 8:30, found the letter, and immediately came storming into my office. His face was red, veins popping in his neck. "What the hell is this?" "It's my resignation. I think the wording is pretty clear. You can't just quit. We have contracts, projects you're managing. I'm giving you 2 weeks to transition everything. That's more than generous considering how undervalued I've been here." Jason wandered in then, coffee in hand, looking confused about the yelling. "What's going on?" "Your brother is quitting," Dad said, like I was committing some unforgivable betrayal. Jason actually had the nerve to look relieved. "Oh, well, that's probably for the best anyway. We were going to have to reorganize your accounts under the new structure. This just makes it easier." I just smiled. "Yeah, about those accounts." That's when I pulled out my contract, slid it across the desk to my dad, pointed to the relevant sections. As you can see, the clients I brought in are assigned to me. And according to Section 7, Paragraph C, I'm allowed to maintain those relationships after departure as long as I don't actively solicit them for 6 months. The color drained from Dad's face as he read it. Jason grabbed the contract, scanned it, then looked at me like I'd just pulled a magic trick. "You can't seriously be planning to take our clients," Dad said. "They're not your clients. They're my clients. You signed this contract, Dad. You agreed to these terms." Jason got that panicky edge to his voice. "But that's most of our big contracts. 63% of annual revenue, actually. I did the math." My dad tried to backtrack. "Now let's not be hasty here. Maybe we can work something out. A partnership arrangement? Profit sharing. You had 7 years to offer me a partnership. You chose to give the company to someone who's contributed almost nothing while telling me I should be grateful to keep my job. So no, Dad, we're not working anything out." I stood up, grabbed my personal items from my desk. Pictures, a few books, my good stapler. "I'll finish out my 2 weeks if you want help with transition documentation. Or you can walk me out right now. Your call." They chose to walk me out. Probably thought it would be some power move or something. Security escorted me to my car while I carried my box of stuff. Very dramatic. Very unnecessary since I'd literally offered to help transition my projects. As I drove away, I called my lawyer, had him draw up incorporation papers for my new company. I'd been thinking about names during my sleepless night and landed on Sustainable Growth Landscaping. Simple, professional, clearly stated what we were about. Then I called my best designer from the old company, Cameron, this brilliant landscape architect who'd been as fed up with Jason's nonsense as I was. Offered him a 20% stake in the new company if he jumped ship with me. He said yes before I even finished explaining the plan. By the end of week 1, I had my business registered. A simple website up, business cards printed, and Cameron on board. I'd also secured a small business loan based on my projected accounts receivable. Banks love lending to people with guaranteed income, and I had contracts worth millions. Week 2 was interesting. My former company started to realize how screwed they were. I wasn't there to manage projects. Cameron had quit too. The field crews were confused because we'd been the ones who actually coordinated everything. Jason tried to step up but quickly proved he had no idea how our systems worked or what different clients needed. I got calls from 3 clients that week asking what was going on, not soliciting from me. They called me directly because things were already falling apart. Crews showed up to the wrong properties. Invoices had errors. Nobody could answer technical questions about the native plant installations I designed. I told each of them the same thing. I'd left the company but wasn't allowed to solicit them for new business for 6 months. I appreciated their loyalty, but they needed to make their own decisions about who to work with. I didn't pitch my services, didn't badmouth my former company, just stated facts. 2 of those 3 fired the old company on the spot and said they'd wait for me. The third said they'd stick it out for now, but asked me to keep them informed about my new venture. By week 3, my first official week as a business owner, my phone was ringing off the hook, more clients calling to ask about my plans. I gave them all the same spiel. Didn't solicit, didn't pitch, just provided information when asked. And they started jumping ship in droves. See, here's what my dad and Jason didn't understand about commercial landscaping contracts. They're not like residential where you mow lawns and plant flowers. These are complex, multi-year relationships built on trust and expertise. Property managers and facilities directors don't care about company names or fancy office spaces. They care about the person who shows up, knows their property inside and out, and solves their problems. That person had been me for 5 years. I knew every property's irrigation quirks, which areas needed special attention, what plants worked best in different microclimates. I knew which property managers wanted detailed reports and which ones just wanted things handled. I knew who to call at the city for permit questions and which contractors did the best work for hardscape projects. Jason knew none of this. My dad was retired in all but name, and the field crews, talented as they were, didn't have the relationships or the expertise to manage complex commercial accounts. Within 4 weeks of me leaving, my former company lost 23 major accounts. These weren't just any accounts. These were the big, profitable, multi-year maintenance contracts that kept the lights on. We're talking about office parks, industrial complexes, shopping centers, the bread and butter of commercial landscaping. Some came to me directly. Some went to competitors because they were frustrated and didn't want to wait 6 months for me to start taking new contracts. Either way, they left. I watched it happen through the industry grapevine. Commercial landscaping is a small world. Everyone talks. Property managers know each other. Word spread fast that I'd started my own company, that I was doing things right, that I actually gave a damn about sustainable practices and customer service. Meanwhile, my former company was hemorrhaging clients and couldn't figure out how to stop the bleeding. Jason tried to step up, but he was completely out of his depth, made promises he couldn't keep, bid projects at rates that barely covered costs because he didn't understand the actual work involved, pissed off the few remaining clients by being unreliable. I didn't have to do anything, didn't badmouth them, didn't steal clients, just existed as a better option and let natural market forces do their thing. My new company's first month revenue was absolutely wild. Even with the 6-month non-solicitation clause, I had clients who'd left my old company on their own and were willing to work with me through the interim. Some hired me as a consultant. Some brought me on for new projects at different properties, not covered by their old contracts. It was all completely legal and above board. Cameron and I were working 70-hour weeks, but loving every minute. We hired 3 experienced crew members who'd also left the old company. People who were tired of Jason's incompetence and my dad's blind favoritism. We operated lean and efficient, with none of the bloat that comes from nepotism hires and legacy overhead. By month 2, my revenue was matching what I'd been bringing in at the old company. Except now, it was my company. My decisions, my profit. The calls from my dad started around week 5. First, they were angry. Accusations that I was violating my non-compete, which didn't exist because he'd never thought to put one in my contract. Threats of legal action that his lawyer quickly told him wouldn't go anywhere because everything I was doing was perfectly legal. When anger didn't work, he tried guilt. Long rambling voicemails about family loyalty and how I was destroying the business my family had built, conveniently forgetting that I'd built most of their current business and that they'd made it crystal clear I wasn't really considered family when it came to ownership. My mom called too, crying about how stressed my dad was, how Jason was overwhelmed. How could I do this to my own family? I almost felt bad until I remembered that family meeting where they all agreed I was nothing without them. Jason sent me texts that alternated between begging and hostility. Sometimes he'd try to appeal to brotherly loyalty, saying we could work something out if I just came back. Other times he'd call me selfish and accuse me of sabotaging him out of jealousy. Dude had absolutely zero self-awareness. I didn't respond to any of them, just focused on building my business. By month 3, I heard through the grapevine that the old company had lost about 90% of its commercial contracts. They still had some residential accounts, the small stuff that Jason's college buddies threw their way, but all the major revenue sources were gone. They'd had to lay off most of the field crews, couldn't make payroll some weeks, canceled their lease on the nice office space and moved operations to my dad's garage. The expensive new truck they'd bought for Jason got repossessed. It was a complete implosion. And honestly, I felt nothing. No satisfaction, no guilt, no vindication, just nothing. They'd made their choices, I'd made mine. The market had spoken. Month 4 was when things got really interesting. My dad called from a number I didn't recognize, so I actually answered. His voice was different, smaller, tired, defeated. "We need to talk," he said. "Face to face, please." I almost said no, but curiosity got the better of me. "Fine, coffee shop on Main Street. Tomorrow at 2. He showed up looking like he'd aged 10 years. Circles under his eyes, clothes that didn't fit right anymore. Probably lost weight from stress. Ordered a black coffee and sat down across from me without making eye contact. "The company's done," he said flatly. "We can't pay our debts. We're going to have to file for bankruptcy in the next few weeks unless we figure something out." I sipped my coffee, said nothing. "I know I screwed up," he continued. "I know I should have valued what you brought to the table. I know I favored your brother when I shouldn't have." "Okay." He looked up at me then, desperate. "Is there any way, could we work something out? Maybe you could come back. We could restructure." "No, please, I'm begging you. The business is going to fail. Everything I built will be gone." "Everything you built?" "Dad, I built 60% of that business. 60. I brought in the clients. I managed the relationships. I did the actual work while Jason coasted on nepotism. You didn't build that business. We built it together. And then you decided to give it all to someone who contributed nothing, while telling me I should be grateful to keep working for you." He winced. "I know. You're right. I was wrong. But please, there has to be something we can do." I thought about it, weighed my options. I could let it fail completely, walk away and never look back. Or, "I'll make you an offer," I said. $1. He blinked. "What?" "I'll buy the company for $1. You sign over all assets, all remaining contracts, the company name, everything. I assume the debts. You and Jason walk away clean." His face went through about 15 different emotions. Shock, anger, humiliation, resignation. $1? That's insulting. That's what the company is worth right now. Actually, it's worth less than nothing because of the debts. I'm offering to take on your liabilities and give you a clean exit. Take it or leave it. And what happens to me and Jason? I don't care. Get jobs somewhere else. Figure it out. Same way I had to figure things out when you decided I wasn't good enough to be part of the family legacy. He sat there in silence for a long time. I could see him doing the math in his head. Pride versus bankruptcy. Ego versus financial ruin. "I need to think about it," he finally said. "You've got 48 hours. After that, the offer expires, and you can sort out bankruptcy on your own." I left him sitting there with his cold coffee and his regrets. He called back 36 hours later, accepted the deal. We met at my lawyer's office to sign the paperwork. My dad looked sick the whole time. signing away the company he'd started 30 years ago for the price of a candy bar. Jason wasn't there. Apparently, he'd already jumped ship, got some entry-level sales job through a family friend, probably told everyone he voluntarily left to pursue other opportunities. I didn't ask, didn't care. The asset transfer was pretty straightforward. There wasn't much left to transfer. Some equipment, a few small contracts, the business name and registration. Most of the valuable stuff had already been liquidated to try to pay bills. I consolidated everything under my new company structure. Kept the name Sustainable Growth Landscaping because it had better branding anyway. Took on about $40,000 in business debts that I paid off within 6 months from new contract revenue. Within 8 months of leaving my family's company, I had completely rebuilt and exceeded their peak annual revenue. Except now I owned it all. Cameron owned 20% like I'd promised. We brought on 2 more junior partners who'd proven themselves invaluable. We now employ 23 people. We're the premier commercial sustainable landscaping company in the region. Property managers specifically seek us out because they know we deliver quality work and actually care about environmental impact. 3 months after the buyout, Rebecca called me with a massive opportunity. Her company was expanding, buying out a competitor's portfolio of 12 commercial properties across 3 cities. She wanted us to handle all the landscaping for the transition. $700,000 over 2 years. I took the contract to celebrate with the team, rented out this nice restaurant, gave everyone bonuses. Cameron pulled me aside and said this was the kind of deal my dad's company could never have landed because they didn't have the capacity or expertise. He was right. 6 months after that, Tom referred me to his company's regional director. They were rolling out a sustainability initiative across 43 properties in 5 states. Wanted a contractor who actually understood native ecosystems and could implement consistent standards across multiple climates. The contract was worth $2.3 million over 3 years. We had to hire 12 more people just to handle the expansion. Opened a second office, bought our own equipment instead of leasing. Started training programs for our crews on sustainable practices. This wasn't just a landscaping company anymore. It was becoming an actual operation. My parents and I haven't spoken since the paperwork signing. Jason tried to add me on LinkedIn a few months ago, which I found hilarious. I didn't accept. Then last month something happened that made the whole thing feel complete. I was at an industry conference. Same one where I'd met Rebecca years ago. Ran into Linda, that property manager who'd rejected us because of Jason's incompetence. She recognized me immediately. Told me she'd been following my company's growth, was impressed with what we'd built. Then she said her company was looking for a new landscaping contractor for their entire portfolio. 15 properties. 15. Would I be interested in bidding? I sent her a proposal the next week. Professional, detailed, competitive pricing. She awarded us the contract without even getting competing bids. Said she'd seen enough of our work through industry connections to know we were the right choice. The same account Jason had blown years ago because he couldn't be bothered to prepare. Now it was mine. Week after that, I got a call from an unknown number. Answered it thinking it was a client. It was my mom. She started with the usual guilt trip. How my dad's health was suffering from stress. How Jason was struggling in his new job. How the family was falling apart. Then she got to the real reason for the call. My cousin was getting married next month. Big family wedding. Everyone would be there. She wanted to know if I'd come, if maybe we could talk, work things out. I told her I'd think about it and hung up. Talked it over with Cameron that night. He said whatever I decided, the team had my back. But he also pointed out that showing up might send the wrong message. Like I was willing to pretend everything was fine when it wasn't. I decided not to go. Sent my cousin a nice gift and a card wishing her well. Didn't mention why I wasn't attending. Let my parents explain that one to the extended family. My mom called again after the wedding. Apparently, everyone had asked where I was. My dad told people I was too busy with work. Jason told people we had a disagreement, but were working it out. Nobody told the truth, that they'd written me off as nothing, and I'd proven them spectacularly wrong. She wanted to meet for coffee, said my dad had things he wanted to say. I told her I'd consider it, and never called back. 2 weeks ago, we signed the deal with that major developer I mentioned, the one with 5 properties and the 10-year maintenance agreement. Contract value over the life of the agreement is $4.1 million. Biggest deal in company history. We took the whole team out to celebrate. 23 employees, all of whom had jobs because I built something real instead of coasting on family connections. Cameron gave a toast about how we'd gone from 2 guys with a truck to a regional powerhouse in under 2 years. During the celebration, my phone buzzed. Text from Jason. First time he'd contacted me directly since I left. Saw the announcement about your developer contract. Congrats, that's huge. I stared at it for a minute. Thought about responding. Thought about being gracious. Maybe opening a door to reconciliation. Then I remembered him sitting at that dining room table, smirking while he told me I was nothing without them. Remembered my dad nodding along. Remembered years of being treated like I was lucky to have a job at a company I'd built. I deleted the message and put my phone away. Yesterday, Cameron and I met with investors about opening a 3rd location. They loved our growth trajectory, our client retention rates, our reputation in the industry. Offered us a capital injection that would let us expand into 2 more states. We're considering it. Would mean more hiring, more equipment, more complexity. But it's the kind of problem I always wanted to have. Too much success to handle with our current capacity. Meanwhile, I heard through that same industry grapevine that my dad's consulting work dried up. Word got around about what happened with his company. Clients don't want to work with someone who ran a successful operation into the ground through poor judgment. Jason's apparently on his 3rd job since leaving. Sales isn't working out for him. Turns out when you can't coast on family connections and actually have to produce results, things get harder. My parents sold their house and moved into a small condo across town. Nothing tragic. They're fine financially from the home sale, just not living the lifestyle they'd gotten used to. And me? I'm sitting in my actual office. Not my dad's garage, not a rented space, but an office we own in a building we're buying, looking at contracts worth millions, managing a team that respects my expertise, building something that's entirely mine. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.